With Halo Infinite's campaign being released and me just recently finishing that campaign, I wanted to put together a story explained video for all of you, as while you were exploring the open world or dying constantly from jackal snipers, you may have forgotten or missed a few key points in Halo Infinite's story. One quick formality, however, if you enjoyed this Halo video and want to see more, I made an entire retrospective on the main installment of the franchise prior to Infinite's release. I also plan to release a future video in the coming days critically reviewing the story of Infinite, as today's video is simply a retelling, not a review. And finally, spoiler warning as always, I'll be spoiling the entirety of the game, so you've been warned. With that out of the way, let's get started. First and foremost, I want to recap the story of Halo 4 and 5 so the proper context is given. If you don't need a refresher, then you can skip to the time on screen and get right into Halo Infinite. But to recap, Halo 4 is the start of the Reclaimer saga and is where the Chief and the UNSC Infinity get introduced to the Prometheans and the Didact, but more importantly, we also discover Cortana is suffering from rampancy. Most AIs have a lifespan of 7 years, and Cortana has been around for 8, so she is way past her digital expiration date. We can see her slowly getting worse and worse as she EMPs the systems of Infinity's control room and just outright stops listening to the Chief at certain points in the game. Later during the final moments of the Didact boss fight, Cortana splits herself into fragments and uses those fragments to defeat the Didact, but due to the immense power this requires, she ends up sacrificing her life to save the Chief, and we end Halo 4 assuming she's gone. Until Halo 5 begins, and the Master Chief accompanied by Blue Team are clearing out a nearby ship, Argent Moon, where he gets a message from Cortana to meet her at Meridian, which we discover is a Forerunner planet. Since Chief is disobeying orders, this is what forces Fireteam Osiris to hunt them and bring them back to the Infinity. Blue Team discovers Cortana is in fact alive, thanks to her somehow going through a slipspace portal and discovering the Domain, a Forerunner network that in a roundabout way cured her rampancy. With this newfound discovery, she explains that the AI can now hold the Mantle of Responsibility. This is an ideology that is pretty much the main cause of the Covenant-Human War and also what's happening in the Reclaimer saga as a whole. But essentially, this is about a race of beings dedicated to, for a lack of a better term, being the Guardians of the Galaxy. Originally, humanity was to be the successors, but Cortana is going against the Forerunner's original wishes and instead wants the AI and her newfound faction, the Created, to be the rulers, but she is using it in a very imperialistic way, as anyone who joins her is spared, but those who don't will perish. Blue Team ends up meeting with Cortana and is captured until Fireteam Osiris saves them. During this encounter, Cortana calls out to all the species and AI in the galaxy to join her. While we don't hear any species, we do hear hundreds of AI answer her call, which causes them to revolt against those who created them, which is why the Infinity is in a state of panic towards the end of the game, as numerous colonies and planets are experiencing widespread outages. After Blue Team is rescued by Fireteam Osiris, Cortana then escapes on her Forerunner Guardian in hopes of finding the UNSC Infinity in an attempt to destroy it, but the Infinity manages to evade her tracking by slip spacing multiple times. Halo 5 then ends with the Master Chief and Spartan Locke meeting with Dr. Halsey, Palmer, and the Arbiter on Sang Helios. Halo Infinite picks up where the legendary ending of Halo 5 ends, as we get a shot of Zeta Halo, the new ring we'll be exploring in Infinite. Shortly after, we see a war break out between the UNSC and the new faction, the Banished. I'll explain both the ring and the Banished in a moment, but for now, let's carry on. During this conflict, the Chief can be seen attempting to stop the Banished forces until Atriox, the faction's leader, completely wipes the floor with him. He then tosses the Chief off the ship and into space. We then get introduced to Echo 216, better known as the pilot, or later in the game, Fernando. He is alone on a UNSC Pelican and is just trying his best to survive. We can see how long he's been on this Pelican, as his facial hair has grown quite considerably. During this scene, he hears the ship's AI say there is a friendly life force nearby, which is how he discovers the Chief. He then takes the Chief inside and boots him back online. We then get a quick shot of Zeta Halo being broken and then are able to start playing. So now let's explain what that ring and the Banished are. The ring, known as Installation 07, or from here on out Zeta Halo, is the ring we traverse through in Halo Infinite. From what we know about the ring, Zeta Halo is 3 times larger than any normal Halo ring we've seen in the series. The ring back during the time of the Forerunners was inhabited by ancient humans, but during the Forerunner Flood War, Faber, the master builder of the Forerunners, used it to perform flood experiments, thus killing lots of its inhabitants. He also left the ring under the control of AI Mendican Bias, the most advanced Forerunner AI to ever exist. During an experiment run by the Master Builder, Mendican Bias would test fire the Halo ring, but this caused a huge problem as this awoke the Primordial. It is said to be the last living precursor in the entire world. The Primordial would then transfer its consciousness into a grave mind like the one we see in Halo 2. The Forerunners were very concerned about this discovery, so they locked it up again, leaving Mendican Bias in charge. However, the Primordial is quite deceptive, as it was able to convince Mendican Bias to side with him, which caused the Primordial to break out of containment, releasing all the flood on the Halo ring. Lots of other small details occurred between now and then, as that was almost 100,000 years ago. However, what's more important is that to anyone's knowledge, Mendicant Bias and the Primordial may still very well be alive and on this ring. As for the Banished, they were introduced in Halo Wars 2. They're a mercenary faction that split off from the original Covenant Empire. They're sort of like Jul 'Mdama's Covenant, which was a splinter group formed from some of the Covenant's original soldiers, except they differ in a few ideologies. The Banished are led by War Master Atriox and are primarily composed of brutes, however they do have other species within their ranks. They're a group that is all about power. Constantly throughout the game, Escharum will try to challenge us as they crave the hunt. Killing and hunting stronger foes to prove that they're powerful is what they do. Its four most important members are Atriox, Decimus, Escharum, and Jaga the Blade Master. Decimus was killed in Halo Wars 2, and since he was second in command within the Banished, the runner-up would take his place, which was Escharum. We already know about Atriox and Escharum from just the few missions in-game, but the only outlier of the group is Jaga, probably the coolest character in the entire game, as he has earned the title of Spartan Killer. All of them minus Decimus are the main characters of the Banished in Halo Infinite and will constantly appear throughout the game. To continue back to where we left off, originally I was going to explain the rest of the story chronologically from the game's point of view, but then that got too convoluted, so I'll try to establish an actual timeline of events. There's been quite a lot of time between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite. If I'm not mistaken, it's been about 3 years since then, so Cortana has had a lot of time to plan her attacks. Throughout the game, the Chief will hear whispers and see echoes of Cortana. These are assumed to be fragments of her memories that the Chief can somehow see. We first see Cortana talking to an AI called Leonidas. He was in charge of Laconia Station and was allied with Cortana. She orders him to sacrifice himself, and Leonidas self-destructs, killing all the UNSC soldiers and Spartans on board. The next one is her talking with Lord Hood from Halo 3 about Earth's surrender. Even the homeworld of the UNSC isn't safe from her jurisdiction. To provoke them, she even summoned her Guardian, who was waiting to fire in case things didn't go her way. According to the Master Chief, he witnessed the Guardian completely eliminate Sydney, Australia, so it seems that Lord Hood was not budging on her offer. The final echo we see is her talking with Atriox, where she goes one step further and threatens the entire Banished homeworld. Atriox, of course, refuses to align himself with her, and the entire planet of Dosiak is completely destroyed in front of his eyes. Cortana has gone completely mad with power and is not willing to listen to anyone. As we enter the final mission, we get even more echoes, but this being about her and Atriox. The first echo we see, we hear Cortana talking about waiting for a specific person to show up and asking what that plan is, questioning what Halsey will think if they try to destroy her. She thought the person that walked into the room was Chief, however it was actually Atriox. Once again, to provide more context throughout the game, we get a few bits here and there about what's going on with the weapon. Essentially, in between the events of Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, the Master Chief was tasked with the deletion of Cortana. He had witnessed the destruction on Earth and all the other planets she destroyed and realized that it was time to come to terms with reality. Cortana is not the same Cortana he once knew, as that one died in Halo 4, and this new one is one that seeks vengeance. So despite their relationship together, he wanted to see his mission through. Dr. Halsey then created another AI who we know as the Weapon. Her task was to mimic the original Cortana so that she could be lured onto Zeta Halo and be trapped there. After being trapped, Cortana would then be deleted, and so would the Weapon, as she served her purpose, which was to capture Cortana. However, while the Weapon succeeded in trapping Cortana, the Chief did not get to her first, as Atriox beat him to her. Going back to the Echo, we see that Atriox and Cortana meet together. Atriox says that Cortana's empire is over and that he's here to discuss her terms of surrender. Atriox goes on to explain that he has discovered immense power within this ring, and what the Silent Auditorium truly is. He wants Cortana to relinquish control of the ring, as that's all Atriox wants. With the power of the Halo ring underneath Banished control, they could wipe out galaxies without even trying. So Cortana devised a plan and ends up blowing up the Halo ring. With the ring broken, it can no longer fire, preventing Atriox and the Banished from claiming it as their own. From what we can gather, shortly after this, it seems that Cortana sacrificed herself to blow up the ring. Not the Halo 4 split into fragments, then become an immortal sacrifice. I mean, this time she seems truly dead. This explains how Cortana, the Weapon, and Atriox got here and why the ring is destroyed. With that out of the way, we can fast forward to present day. Towards the end of the first mission, we discover that Atriox is dead. We have no clue how or when, we just know that he died. This is completely untrue, but once again, more on that later. The Master Chief, with the help of the pilot, lands on Zeta Halo as he has one mission in mind: stopping the Banished from controlling the ring and subsequently firing that ring. The Banished are trying to activate the spires on the ring, as the spires' main jobs are to rebuild the parts of the ring that have been destroyed. The only way for the Chief to prevent them from firing this ring is with the help of the Weapon. Our previous information explains why he knows of the Weapon's existence and where it's located, as he was tasked with helping her delete Cortana. The Master Chief meets with the Weapon and asks where Cortana is. She says that Cortana has already been deleted. At the moment, the two don't know why, but once again, previous info I've already talked about explains why, as she sacrificed herself to blow up Zeta Halo. So keep in mind that two storylines are going on. We have the war against the Banished and Cortana. The Chief is doing both at the same time, so things can get a little bit intertwined. Most of the missions for now are just about defeating the Banished and taking back the ring, but eventually we'll discover a Banished dig site. Upon entering this dig site, we meet a monitor named Despondent Pyre. She's freaking out currently as something called the Harbinger is awake, and judging by her tone, this doesn't sound like a good thing. While we make our way through the conservatory, we hear Despondent Pyre being interrogated by this Harbinger, and she talks about reviving the Endless. We find her separated into multiple pieces, and we also get to see an echo of Cortana and Despondent Pyre. Pyre explains that Cortana may have the weapons of the Halo Ring, but its secrets it holds can never be unearthed. Cortana believes that Pyre is talking about the Flood, and explains to her that there are more things dangerous on this ring than the Flood. This is extremely terrifying in so many different ways. Not only does this confirm to us that the Flood were or possibly still are on this ring, but something far worse exists here. Seeing as within this whole franchise, the Flood has always been the strongest and most terrifying force to go up against, the fact that there's something even worse is a bit bone-chilling. Pyre is freaking out and trying to explain to Cortana that the punished must not be freed, but Cortana refuses to listen. This possibly explains how the Harbinger was able to be awoken. We eventually come face to face with said Harbinger, and it's quite clear that she is of a very different species, something we haven't seen before. The Harbinger says that the Forerunner's lives are at an end and that the Endless will be found. She also talks about something called the Reformation. After this, the Chief then learns of the Spires and heads to one to take it down. It's here where we meet Adjutant Resolution. He's a sub-monitor that was created to replace Despondent Pyre should she be decommissioned or destroyed. Just like the Guilty Spark, he doesn't take too kindly to having his Spire be destroyed, so he attacks us on sight. The Chief defeats him and the Spire is shut down, except only one of them is shut down. There are still 10 more Spires to hunt down, but one of them has the control room within it. This is kind of like how each Halo ring can be fired separately, but can also be fired all at once from the Arc, but instead of rings, it's these Spires. Before we destroy it, we get a cutscene between the Harbinger and Escharum. Aatrox apparently found the Harbinger sometime during his travels and decided to work together. The Harbinger just wants to bring back the Endless. She's fine with the Banished taking the ring, so as long as each party gets their goals met, they won't meddle in each other's affairs. However, this alliance is very shaky as the two definitely don't trust one another. Back to the Chief, he had the weapon make it through the Forerunner structure to shut down the Spire. However, one of these instances is very important. Throughout this mission, the weapon claims to have been scanned by something and is being watched by someone. As a precaution, Master Chief seems to be doing something with his suit's software. Minutes later, when they get inside the control room, the weapon attempts to finish the process, but the Harbinger stops the weapon. Chief uses this exact same software program that he did earlier. If you read the text that appears during this, he was trying to delete the weapon in case she was caught or taken. This goes back to what the weapon said earlier in that mission about wanting the Chief to trust her. Clearly he doesn't trust her at all, as he almost deleted her at the first sign of danger, something he would never do with Cortana. This causes some discrepancy between the two, as the weapon trusts the Chief and is willing to do what he needs her to do, but despite all she's done to help, he still won't trust her. Because of this encounter though, the Harbinger was able to start the Reformation process. This Reformation is taking place at the Silent Auditorium, the area we were in when we were talking about those echoes with Cortana and Aatrox. Before we can leave, we get another boss fight with the sub-monitor who's trying to kill us so the Harbinger can start the Reformation process. It does come out eventually that he was wrong as he didn't understand what the Reformation was, but at this moment he is still trying to kill us. Afterwards, the pilot comes to pick us up until he's attacked and captured by Jaga. We've already seen Jaga's work in action as he's killed all the Spartans we take the abilities from, but now he wants to kill us and he's luring us into a trap by using the pilot as bait. The Master Chief, being the Master Chief, of course, goes after the pilot and has to go through the House of Reckoning. It's an arena built by the Banished so they can hunt the UNSC members they capture by giving them weapons and a base to defend themselves while the Banished attack them from all angles. It's quite the sick and twisted game. After making it through the basic and advanced version of the arena, we get into probably the toughest part of the game, as now we have to defeat Jaga. The room is dark, with tight spaces and very little room to breathe. Jaga also uses an energy sword and active camo, making this fight incredibly terrifying. After defeating Jaga, we walk 10 feet out of the room and get into another boss fight with Escharum, who is also insanely tough. But of course, he's the Master Chief, so he'll prevail and rescue the pilot. The three then go to the Silent Auditorium to stop the Harbinger. This journey also ties into a discovery that the weapon is Cortana. Yes, she dresses and sounds like her, but it's not a coincidence. She is a literal copy of her. In Halo 4, Cortana talks about being replaced with another AI after she's dead, possibly even one that looks like her. Well, they weren't kidding, as the weapon is literally Cortana, just without the knowledge of their adventures. members. She's basically pre-Halo 1 Cortana, who only knew of the Chief's existence and nothing else. The weapon is clearly worried, as now that she realizes she's a copy of Cortana, she's worried that she'll go rampant too, but that's also another mission the Master Chief was tasked with, preventing her from being another Cortana. Continuing into the Silent Auditorium, we make it to where Cortana sacrificed herself and then meet the Harbinger. According to the Harbinger, the place we're stepping foot in is where the Forerunners pass judgment on the Harbinger and her kind. It seems that she has some hatred towards the Forerunners because of what they did to her in the Endless, which is why she's trying to revive them. We do eventually stop her, but before she dies, she mentions that while her time is up and that she's been defeated, the Chief and the Weapon's time is up too, as it seems like she was able to contact the Endless before her death. Right after this, we get another echo of Cortana, but this one's a little different. It doesn't seem like a memory, more like a planned message for the Chief and the Weapon. She says her goodbyes, but wants to apologize for what she's done. She admits that she was wrong and that the entire reason they're together was because they were a team, and her going off on her own was stupid of her to do that. Cortana wants the Chief and the Weapon to learn from her mistakes and to not repeat them again. The two then escape the Silent Auditorium together and reunite with the pilot. There's also this sweet moment where the group exchange names, and we discover that the pilot's name is Fernando. Fernando then asks the Weapon what to call her, and judging from the fact that she asked the Chief for permission, it sounds like she's going to be going with Cortana as her name. The three then discuss future plans as it becomes clear to all three of them that the ring houses something more dangerous, plus the Banished still controls Zeta Halo, so their work isn't finished. However, while their work is only beginning, ours is done as we reach the end of the campaign. We do get a post-credit cutscene which shows Atriox, who is not actually dead, activating this device, which opens a room with a ton of Forerunner slabs, all with a unique marking on it. From what we can gather from these endings, I do have some theories. Firstly, the Harbinger talks about the Endless. This is either the name of her species or the name of the faction. My first choice is a species, however there is an audio log from Despondent Pyre that talks about an uncatalogued species called the Zalanin. My actual theory though is that the Harbinger is related to the Precursors, and seeing as this Endless group is probably going to be our next threat, that means that we will finally be able to see the Precursors in-game for the first time. With the post-credit cutscene in mind, it seems that Atriox will definitely play a large role in the next story as he seems to have his own motivations. If any or all of this is true, this next game is going to be insane. But now we've officially come to the end of the game, and we've also come to the end of the video. Thank you all for watching today, and hopefully I was able to convey the story well enough to you. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I can maybe try to help you. Regardless, thank you for making it this far in the video. Do let me know your thoughts on the campaign and the ending as a whole. I'll be saving my thoughts for that future review on the campaign, so look forward to that. To hold you over though, don't forget to check out my Halo series retrospective video, as a lot of you seem to love it, so thank you all for the support on that. With that out of the way, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and as always, thank you to my returning viewers for coming back. Take care everyone. Goodbye.